Peter Fink joins us in Chandigarh as part of the International Art Conclave from the UK. His projects, his art combines many facets, be it architecture, lighting, ecology, and he will share with us how he, from engineering to art to philosophy, has come to us here at the Chandigarh Art Conclave. Welcome here, Peter.
Welcome.
So, how has the journey been from Czechoslovakia and then back to London? And
I think if it's fun, I enjoy the journey, and if it does other things, that's a bonus. So I hope it was light-hearted.
that's how you like to see it, always?
Yeah. I think people are too serious and too obsessed with what other people think and what people should think and so on. I think one should be much more playful and open-ended and innovative and investigative and see where it all gets you.
Okay, that's a good philosophy to live by.
It is, yeah.
So, tell me, you were in Czechoslovakia and there must be some, as an artist, were there some issues that you faced growing up, and did it make you
It was
into the
interesting.
person that you are?
It did and didn't, because I was born in London
Okay.
to a Welsh mother of Swedish Norwegian parents, to a Czech father. I was brought up in America for the first couple of years after I lived in Czechoslovakia under communism till I was 20.
Okay.
But somehow it was a complex thing, because growing up there was a lot of self-censorship.
Right.
Where people were not able to express themselves. It was very difficult to be individualistic. So if you wanted to have long hair or you wanted to listen to different music, the state didn't like it and punished people for that. So it was difficult, but on the other hand, it also was a strangely egalitarian society where women did enormous advances because there was very good childcare.
Okay.
They were encouraged to be captains of industry and very responsible jobs and so on. So there wasn't any difference between men or women. So in some way it was also quite exciting and empowering, as well as very disempowering. And when I wanted to go to art school, I couldn't go because I didn't want to do figurative drawing. So that disqualified me, because it was all about realism and technique and so on. So the one thing which was very easy to study was engineering, because the country needed a lot of engineers. So I did engineering, and I was in love with my professor of mathematics, and she told me all the answers to the exams, so I didn't have to study. So I survived engineering with developing my memory but not my knowledge, and it was great.
Okay.
After I came to England, when the Russians invaded Czechoslovakia, and because I realized that the country won't be going anywhere for a long time. So I came to England, and England was still very much a sort of alternative 60s swinging England, and the art school was fantastic, and so I enjoyed my time studying sculpture at St. Martin's, and after...
Sculpture was the first choice?
Yeah.
Why, Peter? Something told
Because
you?
I like to do things which use materials and which are about real things. But I also like painting. And after 6 years later, I also went and studied philosophy. And so I did a degree in philosophy, that also interested me. So.
Why philosophy?
Because I just was interested in abstract thinking, and it seemed to me like an interesting thing to do. And at that point, what was very different compared to today is that we never felt we had to have a plan for life. We didn't feel we had to do a career, and we were not thinking about our CV and so on. We did it because we were really interested. And I think that's perhaps the big difference, because when I see young people today, they're very obsessed about if they're doing the right thing and why they're doing it and so on. And they're only thinking always from A to B. And I think that's a very boring way to be, you know.
Isn't it scary to be on the other side like you? Isn't it?
I think it's not, because I think it's like if you use it as a metaphor, if I say let's travel west, you say yes, okay, let's go from here to, I don't know what's west, but say Delhi, from Chandigarh to Delhi. But if you don't want to just travel from Chandigarh to Delhi, you can travel west, and you can go around the earth, and you can come to the same point that we left, and we can still go west. It's much better. So, or you can stop. And I think no one will punish you because you were going west, and now you're just looking west because you stopped. So I think.
So that's the philosophy that's guided you always?
Yeah.
Not to plan, not to...
I do plan, but I think it's important to not to be very obsessed with the short term, because I don't think things work only in short term. You need to look into a much longer perspective. And I think it's interesting, because I think now the whole art world is going through very convoluted times, because no one knows what's what anymore. And there is this sort of like, it's like if you cook and if you put everything into the pot, in the end, even though it's very good ingredients and nice bits of meat or fruit, the meal's terrible because it's not refined, it's not made to your palate, so it's just this horrible mess. And I think that's how things feel today to me.
In the art world, you feel?
I think generally. Yeah.
Generally. And what about the art world, as you see it today?
I think it's difficult.
Is it more confusion?
I don't think it's confusion, but I think it's like sort of going through its... I think it went through so many phases, and it went through modernism and avant-garde and modernism and postmodernism. And now suddenly it's in a sort of phase where I think artists got very corrupted by the big rewards some of them are getting and the popularity and everything. And it's all, I think it's lost its moral compass. But I don't mean moral compass in sense of some ideological values, but more in a way where artists lost the reason in themselves why they're doing it.
Right.
Because they're only doing it because it gets them more girlfriends or more money or bigger cars or better parties or more print in catalogs or more reviews, more fame and so on. But actually the real reason why they did that, I think in a lot of people is gone. And they became professional. And I think I find that very boring.
It hasn't changed for you, Peter, over all these years?
No, it didn't. Because I work with real people all over the world who very often don't even know about art. So I feel I'm free.
So how do you work?
What
is your work about?
For example, one of the last projects I did was with handicapped children. And that was very interesting because every handicapped child, if it's physically or mentally handicapped, has got special needs. But they are all individuals and great human beings. And it was very interesting to understand what would make their life better. So, for example, if you've got autistic children who are very insular in themselves because they got difficulties with empathetic relationship. They get huge reassurance from patterns of behavior that they can repeat.
Okay.
So I did a playground where they could walk certain colors, and they also respond to certain colors better than to other colors. And it was touching to see the joy it brought to them. And also there are other children with other needs, and I built a huge cycle track for them, and they just go around on the bicycles. But I also did a thing where I persuaded the ministry to donate a woodland to the school, and it now got made safe, and we call it the Magic Woodland, and the children now enjoy the sense of being in a wild open space as other children, and it's safe, and we are building a place where they can build dens, and where they can sleep, and where they can cook, and they do theater and noise and so on. And it's great. So it's also, and they didn't hear about art or modern art, or they don't know who Picasso was, or this or that, and so on. And yet I could do something which I think was very valuable.
This was in the UK.
Yeah, in the UK.
So these are the projects that
excite me,
inspire you, excite you.
Mm.
Okay. And if you could talk a few of more such projects, which I was reading about you, which said you use engineering, lighting, and other skills to create works.
I was, for example, I did a project in Italy now, and that's related in a funny way to Chandigarh, because Corbusier, when he visited this town in Italy, Bergamo, he saw this square, which is a Renaissance square, and he burst into tears, saying that it is the most beautiful square that he ever saw. And I did a thing where I changed the square pink with a lot of plants and so on for 16 days as a part of a landscape symposium. It was very interesting because everyone was really, really, really nervous. And I said, I want to do pink, I want to do this, and everyone was very nervous. But in the end, persuaded them to do it. And there was this one woman who was getting married, and she was planning this wedding for a couple of years, and she was complaining that the wedding will be absolutely ruined with this pink square. And when she comes out of the cathedral church into a pink square, it's terrible. So everyone sort of thought that's terrible, and the square was opening on Friday, her wedding was on Sunday, so on Sunday morning all the cameras were there and the journalists were waiting for this hysterical reaction, and they were hoping they will have a really amazing story. And the whole town was there waiting, and everyone was waiting. And so the bells ring, and the doors open, and she comes out of the church with this radiant smile, and she liked the square so much that overnight she dyed the white dress pink.
Oh.
So everyone said exactly, there were all these old women there saying, ah, Bella, ah. That was great. And 250,000 people came to see the square in 16 days. And the economic activity in the town went up 400% in those 16 days. So that gives me a lot of pleasure.
Okay.
It was great because there was old people, young people, and everyone was enjoying being in color. They couldn't articulate or explain why, but they had a smile on their face and they felt happy in the color, which was great. So it was good.
So you like to make people happy with your art?
No, but it was nice to see that, because
yes.
everyone was so nervous, saying if you put
Yes.
pink, people think it's homosexual, or
Yeah.
this, or that, or so. Well. But when it happened, people went and they just responded to it in a way which was great. And that's, I think, what art should do, that it should make people to respond.
Right.
Not to go and read the catalogue, or not to go and read it and try to be clever and get the information. They should just enjoy the direct look. I look at it as simple. I'm a peasant.
Why do you call
I'm a
it
simple man. I'm a simple person.
And is your art simple as well?
I think so. The most complicated things in life often are very simple, like relationships and love and so on. Seems all very complicated, but very simple. It either works or it doesn't work. He's the right man for you, he's not, or woman not. It's true.
That's right. So,
as I was saying to my daughter, that the one mistake she sometimes do, that she finds a prince and she makes him into a frog, and she needs to find a frog and make him into a prince. That's a much better way of being. It's true.
That's right.
It's true.
So you do a lot of public art projects, Peter.
I never had an exhibition in my life, so.
Okay.
And I never sold any art.
So how do you survive?
I from the public artwork. So.
So why was this a conscious decision, Peter? And
It
why?
was, yeah. It was because I already felt, strangely enough, when I started doing art, I felt that our generation will break through the exclusion of art, that art will become big, in the sense that I foresaw that there will be this big explosion in galleries and culture tourism and everything else and so on. And I somehow sense that artists will pay a very big price for that. And I just decided that, and also I was very averse to the bickering in art world about who got this grant and who got this grant and this committee and that committee and this money and that money. And I just simply said the world outside is much bigger than that little art world. So let's see what will happen if I will try to work in that big world. And I think for me it was the right decision. It might have not been a right decision for someone else,
right.
But for me, I think it was the right decision. And I also enjoy working with people, and on these projects you work with hundreds of people, often with very big teams, and I also believe in consulting people, so you don't just sort of drop something on them. I want people to be a part of things, and I find that all stimulating and rewarding.
Okay. And so apart from sculpture, what are the other things that you use or create to do public art?
I'm unusual, I think, in the sense that my work is so different.
Okay.
That I can do very big land art, I can work with light, I can work on now, for example, I'm looking at a design of a new bridge, a very big bridge over the Thames in London. So I just do very different things, and that's what I enjoy. And I work with light on a big way, and I transformed skyscrapers with light in a way that you could see it over 40 kilometers and things like that, and it was seen by millions of people. And
tell us about this one.
With Anne, my partner, we saw this metal skeleton growing up in our back garden almost, in Docklands. It was Canary Wharf, the tallest building in Europe. And I approached the developer, and we got his support to transform the building with light for a couple of weeks. And it was absolutely amazing, because we made the building to count down during New Year. So millions of people were shouting, and there was this human voices across the whole of London with the building. And we had it busking with radios because it was playing to music. And so there were all these big parties everywhere. And it was amazing because people were very shocked how big the building was. But when you put the lighting on it, which was 6 kilometers long, and you could see it over 40 kilometers, the building looked very small. And from that point onwards, people started being very friendly towards the building because somehow they stopped being obsessed by its height. And it was just very enjoyable because I think kids loved it. And what I like about this project is that even though it lasted for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I forgot now, if you speak to taxi drivers and people, they still remember it. And I quite like when things leave a deep memory in people because our life in many ways is made out of memories.
That's right.
So it's good if you are able to create this big shared memory in people. It's great.
So
was good
the
fun.
lack of permanency of an art piece
I do
or
very
a
permanent
painting.
things, but I also do very impermanent things because I like both. Yeah.
But when you do public art projects, Peter, does it involve more than just art because you have to
Oh,
do
sure.
so
No,
much
no,
of...
no, no, no. It involves
it?
enormous organization. It involves huge powers of persuasion.
Yes.
It involves enormous amount of patience and sometimes very strong nerves.
Yes,
But
exactly.
it's good.
So how does this work? Do you conceive a project, or do they come to you, or does something drive you?
I just do both. Sometimes people come to me, sometimes I conceive things from nothing. So there's nothing and I make the funding. For example, I did a very big project in London where I built a big park
Park. Okay.
out of spoil, construction spoil, and that's these big earth mounds.
Okay.
And that was built at no cost to the taxpayer because it was all paid for by the spoil. And that was amazing because when I was developing it, I spent 2 years talking to local people. And we went through all kinds of options and so on. And when the whole thing started to happen, the money started rolling in for the spoil that should pay for the finishing of the park
Right.
and fishing lakes and so on. And there was a political change in the local government, and they saw all this money sitting in the bank, so they wanted to take it and do something else. And because I spent 2 years talking to the people, there was 1,200 people demonstrating in front of the town hall to save their park. And the politicians got such a fright that they put the money back immediately. And that was amazing because in a time of political apathy, to get 1,200 people led by a local priest, not even young people, was absolutely astounding. But now everyone thinks there's a huge support of the park. And when I went there recently with some people, Indian gentleman came to me and he said, "Did you ever visited this park?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Welcome in our park." And the local Hindu, whenever the festival is, they come there in their robes, thousands of them on the mounds to worship in the sun and so on. And all the communities use it, and it's a very safe space which people absolutely love, precisely because there is a very inclusive spirit in this place, because people felt a part of it from the very beginning, they feel a part of it now, and the park is not only safe but it's clean because no one, everyone cares about it, and the people use it in so many ways, and it's great. It's one of the only places in London where you can fish.
You can fish.
Yeah. And it was quite interesting because that, speaking about practicalities, how things can get complicated. I originally wanted one big lake, and there's a government airport close to it, and they objected to it because of birds nesting on the water and threatening the aeroplanes.
Right.
So I had to work with the ornithologist for 6 months to try to understand how the birds think. And we were able to persuade the Ministry of Defense, all the generals, that if we split the water into 6 smaller lakes, but have the lake connected underneath for the fish,
Okay.
so no big swan will land on it because it will be too short.
Too small.
So we had to, and so I said, imagine that you're a swan and you see this water and you say, this is too short for me to land, and it's not different from your aeroplanes. And they immediately said, yeah, that makes sense, okay. So they approved it, so we got the fishery there. But
Interesting.
that took 6 months of studying birds. Yeah. That was fun.
Yes. So you go to different places when you do one project. It takes you to different areas and places, and that must be
You
so
learn different
stimulating.
things, yeah.
Yes. And do you also travel outside of the UK to do projects,
Yeah, I do,
Peter?
yeah.
Okay. So if you could, anything in India that you did?
I did actually, in Patiala.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
I did a sculpture of Shiva out of steel, an abstract sculpture. Because with Aftarjit, we organized a sculpture symposium in India 20 years ago.
Okay.
It was great. We got sculptors from South India, North India. We got sculptors from Japan, America, Europe. And the funny thing about it was that the South Indian sculptors were as foreign to the North Indian sculptors as we were. It was great fun. And that was interesting because we had a sculptor there from Germany who specified that he wanted a big piece of Jaipur sandstone, the red sandstone.
Yes.
So we had it, it came on a lorry, and I said, okay, let's get a crane and get it off. There was no crane anywhere in the north of India to take that big piece of stone off. And the university, everyone was doing like that, we didn't know what to do. So I said, let's go and speak to the Indian Army. And we went to this godforsaken place somewhere, into the engineering division. And we got in, they thought we were the Russian advisors, so they let us in. And we got to the general, and somehow we persuaded him to lend us this crane. So we organized this military exercise with all these armored carriers and everything, and the crane came in the middle of the night, and they took the stone off, and it went off again. It was great.
This is all in Patiala?
Yeah, it was on in Patiala.
Okay. And you created the sculpture
sculptures,
here?
Yeah. And I persuaded some steel company to give me all the steel for it, which was great.
So Peter, when you work on projects which are not, which are more permanent, what are the materials that you explore and the ideas that you explore?
I work with very high-tech materials like carbon fiber to lasers, to earth, to trees, to plants. So I'm very interested now in the idea of growing food in cities. So I'm working with someone on a botanical garden for the 21st century. So that's really, so my interests are
So tell us a little about this one.
It's quite interesting because
Growing
I
food.
think
That's something we're also worried about. With
yeah,
more
because I think
farmlands turning into malls and flats.
I think what's interesting is that historically cities, apart from the super cities, were always the natural size for the agriculture to support them around. And the gardens, the urban gardens, the market gardens. And now there's, because people come to cities for work and so on, there's more and more people coming.
Yeah.
And the agriculture is getting global and it's getting industrialized. And it starts threatening the safety of the food because one doesn't know what's in the food, where it's coming from, and so on. And also I think people in the cities are losing the idea where things come from.
Yes.
Like if you say courgette, some children think it comes from under the ground, or because they never saw it. And I think so. The idea is to build this botanical garden next to a monastery in Italy, which will be a school to learn for people to learn to cook, but to cook slow cooking and regional cooking and so on. And this garden will be a garden which will explain how modern agriculture cultivated certain plants.
Right.
And the whole discussion about genetically modified plants, and also it will try to show how people can utilize the public spaces and gardens for growing food which is organic, and how it could be done, and also looking at high-tech advances like hydroponic planting and so on. So it will be trying to tell the history of our food in terms of plants. And I think that wasn't done anywhere yet.
No,
So
no.
it could be very fun.
Yes, this is back in Italy.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on now. We're doing the first 100 meters of it, but it's a project which will last for years.
For years, of course,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course. So where does your work take you? Books, researches, people?
You know, I'm just a person that I just like learning new things, and I think sometimes the best thing is not knowing much and starting just from the beginning.
Right. And does it also take you back sometimes to your roots and to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everything is a circular journey. No?
Right.
I often love going back to the places I visited, and they are all different always. Like when I came to India 35 years ago, I collected a lot of textiles, because at that point the women spent years and years making their wedding box, and after the husband would just give it away because he didn't value it anymore. It was that moment when the fluorescent tubes came into the villages, and when plastic and tablecloth and formica started covering the tables, and when nylon fabric started coming in, and things changed, and it was that moment, this huge change of culture and living. And I'm sure and I'm going to the same village now 35 years later, and I'm sure it will be very different again. So
Where was this meeting?
a small place by Ludhiana, which is Aftarjeet's birthplace.
Right.
So
Do these changes, how do you look at them with your?
I just think one hasn't got the right to judge what people do, but it's good to notice.
And how do you look at art now around you?
I think there's a lot of interesting art, but I think there's too many artists. I think there's just far too much of it. But on the other hand, there's not enough of it. So I think so.
Enough of it for?
I think it's just
people?
one of those things that I think that somehow art is everywhere, but it's sort of not everywhere. So it's really like it's complicated. But us looking at it.
But back there in the UK, like in India, art education is not it's not part of schools or colleges, or it's not even part of our lives. But is there a shift back there in the UK where it's more part of public life and is not alienated from the people?
I think it's a complicated thing, because I think in some way art education, but why?
Okay.
Is it a middle class thing, or is it making you to realize that creativity has got certain feel to it, and it gives you a chance, or what is it? It's a very difficult one. So I think, and I think it needs perhaps much more thought. And
Right. So
you see,
how do you see this conclave?
I think it's great. And it's great because I just think people should have an opportunity to talk and share ideas, and also make a space for other people to become a part of the discussion, and I think that's can only be good.
Mm.
And after you can get on and go back and work, so it's always good to have an opportunity to.
So what are you working on these days, Peter?
I'm working on a potentially big project in Spain, which could involve 2 million lorry loads of material that I will be shaping into a big bit of land art. And that will be the most advanced recycling on the planet.
Tell us a little in detail about it.
It's attempt to recycle material, rubbish produced by a million people, and ensure that 80% of it goes back into productive cycle as material you can use, and also produce energy with the rest in plasma incinerators. And it's very complicated because it involves door-to-door collection and every day of different types of domestic refuse and industrial refuse and so on. And I feel it's great because I think it's one of those things which is someone trying to answer a huge global challenge of how to prevent rubbish. This is one of the things that you see in India, that there's a phenomenal amount of plastic and rubbish everywhere. Because even though the Indian society is very orientated on recycling, but the recycling is happening often at very exploitative conditions by children, untouchables and so on and so forth. And also the society, it cannot control the enormous amount of rubbish that's everywhere. So the rubbish is, so people develop the way of not seeing it.
Right.
And I think so this thing in Spain is the first attempt that a very large community decided that they will really take this challenge on, and let's see what happens.
And what do you see as the outcome here of the
The outcome will be it's recycling, because some of the material that produces energy ends up as ash, and you must put it somewhere.
Right.
And we will be filling up this huge quarry with it and re-landscaping it into something else. So.
Okay. And using, of course, all that you have in different ways.
Yeah. So that was sort of be.
So at the end of it, it's a lot of collaborative work. Your
Absolutely,
art.
absolutely. A lot of collaboration, working with many other people, and learning from their knowledge of other professions and so on. No, it's huge collaboration. Yeah.
Yes, and taking it to a different dimension than just restricting it to probably a park or a gallery or an exhibition hall.
Yeah, that's right. It becomes very multi-layered.
Mm.
It's not about a white box and walking in and behaving like in a white box. Yeah.
But are you tempted sometime to just do works which are completely intimate, personal?
Yeah, I do.
Just your own?
Yeah. I do painting.
Okay.
And I just do it for my own sake. Yeah.
Mm.
You never know. Next thing I will do will be this small.
So
and I will spend the next 10 years on it.
And what are you painting these days?
I just paint with color,
paint.
and it's a form of relaxation. Yeah.
Okay. And you travel without work? Does traveling give you a lot of
Yeah,
inputs?
I like traveling. Yeah, I like traveling a lot. Now more than before.
Mm. And at work is constant? Is it every day or depends?
I had a company which I closed because I didn't want to be responsible to be in the office every day. So now I'm seeing how it is to work again alone, which is great.
Okay. So you're working alone?
Yeah,
Mm.
that's good fun.
Okay. And what's something that you're looking at really?
I'm looking at the botanical garden, and I'm looking at this big recycling thing.
Okay, and that will involve many
And I'm
years
just
of-
completing a square in Italy now at Empire Square. So it's all fun.
It's all fun. And it involves a lot of architecture, ecology,
Yeah.
art and engineering.
Yeah, engineering.
So you put it all together
Yeah.
and make sense of it.
Yeah, that's
Great. Thank you,
fantastic.
Peter. Thank you.
Great.